The diesel pumps at the Crossroads Travel Centre hummed their familiar song as Frank Holloway stepped down from his Kenworth W900, his boots hitting the cracked concrete with the weariness of a man who had been driving for 14 hours straight. The Arizona sun had set an hour ago, leaving behind a sky painted in deep purples and fading oranges, the kind of sunset that made even the most jaded trucker pause and remember why they loved the open road. Frank was 57 years old, with silver hair cropped close to his skull and hands that told the story of 4 decades behind the wheel. He had driven through blizzards in Montana, flash floods in Texas, and wildfires in California. He had seen things that would make most people weep and things that would make them laugh until their sides ached. But tonight, he was just tired, bone tired, in the way that only long-haul truckers understood. The kind of tired that seeped into your bones and made you question every decision that had led you to this moment. The kind of tired that made you think about all the roads not taken, all the chances missed, all the people left behind. He stretched his back, feeling the vertebrae pop and crack like a string of firecrackers. His doctor had been warning him for years about the toll this job was taking on his body. Sit too long, eat too much fast food, sleep in positions that would make a chiropractor weep. But what else was he supposed to do? The road was all he knew. The road was all he had left. He walked toward the gas station, his reflection ghosting across the dark windows. The place was quiet for a Thursday night. Just a couple of cars at the pumps and the familiar glow of fluorescent lights spilling out onto the parking lot. Frank needed coffee, a bathroom break, and maybe one of those questionable hot dogs that had probably been rotating on the warmer since Tuesday. A coyote howled somewhere in the distance, its mournful cry echoing across the desert. Frank paused to listen, remembering how Martha used to love that sound. She said it reminded her that the world was still wild, still full of mystery and possibility. He missed her so much, it was like a physical ache, a hole in his chest that never quite healed. Inside, the air conditioning hit him like a wall of cold, a welcome relief from the lingering desert heat. The clerk behind the counter was a young woman with purple streaks in her hair and a nose ring that caught the light when she moved. She nodded at Frank without really seeing him, her attention fixed on the phone in her hand. Frank made his way to the coffee station, grabbing the largest cup they had and filling it with the strongest brew available. The liquid was thick and dark, more like motor oil than coffee, but it would do the job. He added 2 packets of sugar and stirred it with a wooden stick that immediately began to disintegrate. The coffee machine gurgled and hissed, a familiar soundtrack to countless late nights on the road. Frank had probably consumed enough coffee in his lifetime to fill an Olympic swimming pool. Martha used to joke that his blood type was Folgers. She had tried to get him to switch to decaf, worried about his heart, but old habits died hard, especially when those habits were the only thing keeping you awake through the endless miles. That was when he heard it. A small sound, almost lost beneath the hum of the refrigerator units and the tinny country music playing from the overhead speakers. It was the sound of someone crying, trying hard not to be heard. Frank paused, coffee cup in hand, and listened. The sound was coming from the back of the store, near the restrooms. He hesitated, his natural instinct to mind his own business warring with something deeper, something that had been sleeping inside him for a long time. He walked toward the sound, his boots squeaking on the linoleum floor. Around the corner, past the display of truck accessories and air fresheners shaped like pine trees, he found the source. A girl sat huddled against the wall, her knees drawn up to her chest and her face buried in her arms. She could not have been more than 12 or 13, with tangled brown hair that fell past her shoulders and clothes that hung on her thin frame like they belonged to someone else. A small backpack sat beside her, its zipper half open, revealing a jumble of clothes and what looked like a stuffed animal. Frank stopped a few feet away, not wanting to startle her. "Hey there," he said softly. "You okay?" The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. They were green, those eyes, the color of spring leaves, and they were rimmed with red from crying. She pressed herself harder against the wall, as if trying to disappear into it. "I'm fine," she said quickly, her voice hoarse. "I'm just waiting for someone." Frank had been around long enough to recognize a lie when he heard one. He glanced around the empty hallway, then back at the girl. "Mind if I sit down? My old legs aren't what they used to be." The girl hesitated, then shrugged, a tiny movement that could have meant anything. Frank lowered himself to the floor, his knees protesting with a symphony of cracks and pops. He leaned against the opposite wall, giving her space, and took a sip of his coffee. "Name's Frank," he said, "Frank Holloway. I drive that big blue Kenworth out there, the one with the eagle painted on the side." The girl said nothing, but her eyes flickered toward the window, where the truck was visible in the parking lot. "What's your name?" Frank asked. Another long pause, then so quietly he almost missed it. "Lily." "That's a pretty name," Frank said. "My wife used to grow lilies in our garden, white ones mostly, but sometimes she'd plant the orange ones too. Said they reminded her of sunsets." Lily's expression shifted slightly, a crack in her armor. "Used to?" Frank nodded, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. "She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. We had 42 years together, me and Martha. Not long enough, but more than a lot of people get." "I'm sorry," Lily whispered. "Thank you." Frank took another sip of coffee, letting the silence settle between them. "So, Lily, you want to tell me what you're really doing here? Because I've been driving trucks since before you were born, and I've seen my share of kids in trouble. You've got that look about you." Lily's lower lip trembled, but she clenched her jaw, fighting to maintain control. "It's none of your business," she said, but her voice wavered. "You're right," Frank agreed. "It's not. But sometimes it helps to talk to a stranger, someone who doesn't know you, doesn't have any expectations, someone who's just passing through." The girl stared at him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for something. Frank did not know what she was looking for, but whatever it was, she seemed to find it. "I ran away," she said finally, "from the group home. They were going to separate me from my brother, send him to a different facility 3 hours away. They said it would be better for both of us, but that's a lie. Danny's all I have left." Frank felt his heart clench. "Where's Danny now?" "Still at the home." Lily's voice broke, and tears began streaming down her face. "He's sick, mister, really sick. The doctors say he might not get better. And they want to send him away to some special hospital, and I won't be able to see him. I won't be there when... She could not finish the sentence. Frank set down his coffee cup and moved closer, sitting beside her against the wall. He did not touch her, did not presume that kind of familiarity, but he was close enough that she could feel his presence. "How old is Danny?" he asked gently. 8. His birthday was last month. I saved up money from doing chores and bought him a comic book, Spider-Man. That's his favorite." Frank nodded. "And how long has he been sick?" "Since we were little. It's his heart. He was born with something wrong with it, and the doctors have been trying to fix it for years, but it keeps getting worse. Last month, he had to go to the hospital again. They put him on a machine that helps his heart pump. He can't leave the hospital now. Is that where you're trying to go, to see him?" Lily shook her head. "No. I mean, yes. I want to see him, but that's not why I ran away." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn piece of paper, folded and refolded so many times that the creases were soft as fabric. "Danny made a list," she said, unfolding it carefully. "A wish list, things he wanted to do before—" She could not say the word. Frank understood. "He handed it to me the last time I visited," Lily continued. "He said he knew he wasn't going to be able to do any of them, but he wanted me to have it anyway. He said maybe I could do them for him, so he could live through me." Frank took the paper gently, his calloused fingers brushing against her small ones. The list was written in a child's handwriting, the letters uneven and earnest. See the ocean, ride in a big truck, eat ice cream for breakfast, watch the sun come up, Find a shooting star and make a wish. Tell Lily she's the best sister ever. Frank read the list twice, his throat tightening with each item. He looked at Lily, at the fierce determination in her tear-stained face, and he saw something that he recognized, something that had been dormant in him for a long time. "You were going to try to do all these things for him," he said. "That's why you ran away." Lily nodded. "I know it's stupid. I don't have any money, and I don't know where the ocean is, and nobody's going to help me. But I had to try. Danny believed in me. He said I was the bravest person he knew, and I wanted to prove him right. Even if I fail, at least I tried. At least I didn't just sit there and do nothing while my little brother—" She broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Frank sat beside her, feeling the weight of her grief like a physical thing pressing against his chest. He thought about Martha, about the dreams they had shared and the ones that had gone unfulfilled. He thought about the empty seat beside him in the truck, the silence that had replaced her laughter. He thought about all the miles he had driven since she died, running from the pain, hiding in the rhythm of the road. And he thought about this girl, this fierce, broken child, who loved her brother so much that she was willing to brave the world alone for him. Frank picked up the list and read it one more time. Then he folded it carefully and handed it back to Lily. "The ocean is about 6 hours from here," he said. 8 if we take the scenic route." Lily looked up at him, confusion mixing with the tears on her face. "What?" "I'm heading to California anyway," Frank said. "Got a load of machine parts to deliver in San Diego. That's right on the coast. The Pacific Ocean, big and blue and beautiful." Lily stared at him like he had sprouted a second head. "You would do that? Take me to the ocean?" "I would take you to see the ocean," Frank said carefully. "But we've got to do this right, Lily. Running away isn't the answer. People are probably looking for you right now, worried sick. We need to let them know you're safe, and we need to make sure this is all above board. Otherwise, I'm just some stranger who picked up a kid, and that's not going to end well for either of us." Lily's face fell. "They'll just send me back." "They won't care about Danny's list." Frank shook his head. "We'll make them care, but first you need to trust me. Can you do that?" The girl studied him for a long moment, her green eyes old beyond their years. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you." Frank pulled out his phone, his fingers hesitating over the keypad. "Before I make any calls," he said, "I need you to tell me everything. The name of the group home, who's in charge, what hospital Danny's at, everything. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it together, and we're going to do it right." Lily nodded and began to talk. The story came out in fits and starts, punctuated by tears and long silences. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 9 and Danny was 5. There had been no other family willing to take them in, so they had entered the foster care system. For a while, they had been placed together with a kind, elderly couple, but the woman had gotten sick and could no longer care for them. Since then, they had bounced between group homes and temporary placements, always together, always fighting to stay that way. Danny's health had deteriorated steadily, his weak heart struggling to keep up with his growing body. 6 months ago, he had been admitted to the hospital for what was supposed to be a routine procedure. He had not left since. The group home Lily had run from was in Tucson, about 2 hours east. The hospital where Danny was staying was in Phoenix, an hour in the other direction. The people in charge of their case were overworked and understaffed, doing their best with too many kids and too few resources. "They're not bad people," Lily admitted. "Mrs. Patterson, she runs the home. She tries her best, but she doesn't understand. She thinks separating us will help Danny focus on getting better. She doesn't get that I'm the only thing he's got left to fight for." Frank listened to it all, his heart growing heavier with each word. When Lily finished, he sat in silence for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Okay," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to call Mrs. Patterson and let her know you're safe. Then I'm going to explain what you told me about Danny's list and what you were trying to do. And then I'm going to ask her permission to help you complete that list." Lily's eyes widened. "You think she'll say yes?" "I think," Frank said slowly, "that people are often better than we expect them to be. And if she says no, we'll figure out another way. But we have to try. That's what you said, right? At least we tried." He made the call while Lily watched, her small hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. Mrs. Patterson answered on the third ring, her voice frantic with worry. Frank explained who he was, where Lily was, and that she was safe. He could hear the woman's relief through the phone, followed quickly by frustration and anger. "She can't just run off like that," Mrs. Patterson said. "We have rules, procedures. She could have been hurt or worse." "I understand," Frank said calmly, "but with respect, Ma'am, I think you might be missing the bigger picture here. This girl just told me her little brother is dying, and the only thing she wants is to do something meaningful for him before he's gone. She's not a delinquent. She's a kid who loves her brother." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Frank waited. "What exactly are you proposing?" Mrs. Patterson asked finally. Frank told her about the list, about his route to California, about his plan to help Lily complete as many items as possible before returning her safely. He gave her his driver's license number, his trucking company's contact information, and the names of 3 references who could vouch for his character. "I know this is unusual," he said, "and I know you have every reason to say no, but sometimes the rules need to bend a little, especially when a kid's heart is on the line. Both kids' hearts, actually." Another long pause. Then, to Frank's surprise, he heard Mrs. Patterson sigh. "Danny has been asking for Lily every day," she said quietly. "The doctors say it's not looking good. They're doing everything they can, but his heart is failing faster than they expected." Frank closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. "I'm sorry," he said. "If you can really do this, Mrs. Patterson continued, "if you can really help her complete that list and bring her back safely, I think it might be exactly what both of them need. Danny needs to know his sister is out there, living and dreaming, and doing things he can't do. And Lily needs to feel like she's done something that matters. So you're saying yes? I'm saying, don't make me regret this. Check in every few hours. Send photos when you can. And bring her back by Sunday night, no later. Danny has a surgery scheduled for Monday, and she should be there for that." "We'll be there," Frank promised. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. You won't regret this." He hung up and looked at Lily, who was staring at him with an expression of disbelief. Her green eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open, as if she could not quite process what had just happened. "She said yes," Lily breathed. "She said yes," Frank confirmed. "But we've got a lot of ground to cover and not much time to do it. You ready?" Lily's face transformed, the grief and fear giving way to something that looked almost like hope. It was a fragile thing, that hope, like a candle flame in a strong wind. But it was there, flickering to life for the first time since Frank had found her huddled against that wall. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm really ready." Frank stood up and offered her his hand. She took it, her small fingers wrapping around his calloused palm. Together, they walked out of the gas station, past the clerk who barely glanced up from her phone, past the rotating hot dogs and the coffee station and the rack of dusty magazines. The night air was cool now, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. A few stars had begun to appear overhead, pinpricks of light in the vast desert sky. Frank looked up at them and thought about all the nights he had spent beneath these same stars, feeling small and insignificant and utterly alone. Tonight felt different. Tonight he had a purpose. They walked out of the gas station together, past the clerk who barely glanced up from her phone, past the rotating hot dogs and the coffee station and the rack of dusty magazines. The night air was cool now, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Frank led Lily to his truck, opening the passenger door and helping her climb up into the cab. Her eyes went wide as she took in the interior, the array of gauges and switches, the sleeper berth behind the seats, the CB radio crackling with distant voices. "This is so cool," she said, her voice filled with wonder. It's like a spaceship or something. Frank chuckled, pleased by her reaction. It's home, more or less, he said. I spend more time in this cab than anywhere else on Earth. Got everything I need right here. Bed in the back, little fridge for food, even a microwave for heating up meals. Lily ran her fingers over the dashboard, touching the various controls with careful curiosity. What does this one do? She asked, pointing to a large red button. That's the engine brake. Helps slow down the truck on steep hills without wearing out the regular brakes. This rig weighs about 80,000 pounds fully loaded. Takes a lot to stop something that heavy. 80,000 pounds. Lily's eyes went even wider. That's like 40 cars. Something like that, Frank agreed. It's a lot of responsibility, driving one of these. You've got to respect the machine, respect the road, respect everyone else out there trying to get where they're going. He walked around to the driver's side and climbed in, settling into the seat that had molded itself to his body over years of use. The leather was worn smooth in places, cracked in others, but it felt like an old friend welcoming him back. "Buckle up," he said, pointing to her seatbelt. "Safety first." Lily complied, then turned to look at him with those serious green eyes. "Mr. Frank? Yeah? Thank you. For believing me. For helping me. Most grown-ups don't." Frank felt something twist in his chest. "Well," he said gruffly, clearing his throat, "most grown-ups are fools, present company included sometimes." He started the engine, and Lily jumped slightly at the deep rumble that filled the cab. The whole truck seemed to come alive around them, vibrating with barely contained power. "This is so cool," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Frank smiled, the first real smile he had felt in a long time. "Welcome aboard," he said. "We've got a list to complete." He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, feeling the familiar rumble vibrate through his bones. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. "First item on the list," Frank said. "Ride in a big truck. I'd say we can check that one off." Lily laughed, a sound so pure and unexpected that it caught Frank off guard. For just a moment, she was not a grief-stricken runaway or a child facing impossible loss. She was just a kid, experiencing something amazing for the first time. The laugh faded, but the smile remained, softer now, touched with wonder. "I never thought I'd actually ride in one of these," she said. "Danny talks about trucks all the time. He has this collection of toy trucks, must be 50 of them at least. He knows all the different types, the makes and models. He's going to be so jealous when I tell him about this." Frank felt his heart warm at the thought of Danny, sick in his hospital bed, finding joy in something as simple as toy trucks. "You can take pictures," he said. "Video too, if you want. Show him everything." "Really?" Lily pulled out her phone, an old model with a cracked screen. "I don't have much battery left, but I can try to save it for the important stuff." "We'll get you a charger," Frank said. "Can't have you running out of juice before we see the ocean." He pulled out of the parking lot and onto the highway, pointing the truck west toward California and the ocean that waited there. "Tell me about Danny," he said as they drove. "What's he like?" Lily's face softened, her eyes going distant with memory. "He's the bravest person I know," she said. "Even when he's scared, even when it hurts, he never complains. He just keeps smiling, keeps telling jokes, keeps trying to make everyone else feel better. The nurses at the hospital love him. They fight over who gets to be assigned to his room. Sounds like a special kid." "He is." Lily paused, her voice catching. "He's so smart, too. He can't go to regular school because of his heart, but he reads everything he can get his hands on. History, science, comics, everything. He says when he grows up, he wants to be an astronaut. I don't have the heart to tell him that astronauts need to be really healthy." Frank nodded, his hands steady on the wheel. "Maybe he will be healthy," he said. "Medicine's getting better all the time. Doctors can do things today that seemed impossible 10 years ago." Lily shrugged, a gesture that carried all the weight of her young years. "Maybe, but even if he doesn't get better, he still dreams about it. He has this whole plan worked out. He's going to go to space camp, then college, then NASA. He's even picked out the planet he wants to explore first. Which one? Mars. He says it's red like his favorite superhero's costume, and that makes it special. Frank smiled despite the ache in his chest. Smart reasoning, he said. I like this kid already. He loves Spider-Man because Peter Parker never gives up, even when everything's against him. Danny says that's how he wants to be. A hero, even if nobody knows it. Frank nodded, his hands steady on the wheel. What else is on that list? Lily pulled out the paper again, smoothing it on her knee. See the ocean, ride in a big truck. That's done. Eat ice cream for breakfast, watch the sun come up, find a shooting star and make a wish. And, she hesitated, tell Lily she's the best sister ever. But he already did that. He wrote it on the list. Maybe he wants to hear you say it back, Frank suggested. Sometimes telling someone they matter is the most important thing we can do. Lily was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the darkness rushing past. Do you think he knows, she asked softly, that I love him? I think he knows, Frank said, but it never hurts to say it out loud, as many times as you can. They drove through the night, the miles disappearing beneath the truck's wheels. Frank told Lily stories about his years on the road, about the strange and wonderful things he had seen, about Martha and the life they had built together. Lily listened, occasionally asking questions, gradually relaxing into the rhythm of the journey. Tell me more about Martha, Lily said after a while. What was she like? Frank smiled, the memories flooding back. She was the most stubborn woman I ever met, he said, and the most loving. She had this way of looking at people, like she could see right through to their souls. She knew I was going to propose before I even bought the ring. How did you meet? At a county fair, if you can believe it. Frank chuckled at the memory. I was 19 years old, thought I knew everything. She was working at the cotton candy booth, and I must have bought a dozen of those things just to have an excuse to talk to her. My teeth hurt for a week afterward. Lily giggled. That's so romantic. I thought so. Her father didn't agree. He was a preacher, very strict, thought truckers were trouble. Took me 3 years to convince him I was worthy of his daughter. What changed his mind? Frank's expression grew thoughtful. Martha got sick. Pneumonia, real bad. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I drove through a blizzard to be there. Crashed my truck, walked the last 5 miles through the snow. When her father saw me standing there, half frozen and barely able to stand, he knew. Knew what? That I loved her more than anything else in this world. That I would do whatever it took to be with her. Lily was quiet for a moment. That's how I feel about Danny, she said softly. I would do anything for him. I know you would, Frank said. That's why we're doing this. The CB radio crackled with chatter from other truckers, voices floating through the darkness like ghosts. Frank reached over and adjusted the volume. What's that? Lily asked. CB radio, Frank explained. It's how truckers talk to each other. We share information about traffic, weather, road conditions. It can get pretty colorful sometimes. Lily listened to the voices, her eyes wide with fascination. Do they have names? Handle names. Nicknames, basically. Mine is Silver Eagle. Martha gave it to me because of the silver streak in my hair and the eagle on the side of the truck. What would my handle name be? Frank considered for a moment. Lily Brave, he decided, because that's what you are. Lily smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. Lily Brave. I like it. They passed through small towns and open desert, the landscape shifting beneath the headlights. Lily asked about the places they saw, and Frank told her what he knew, sharing the accumulated knowledge of 4 decades on the road. You've really been everywhere, Lily said. Pretty much. All 48 continental states, plus parts of Canada and Mexico. Each place has its own character, its own beauty. Even the places that seem boring at first have something special about them if you look hard enough. What's your favorite place? Frank thought about it. There's a spot in Montana, he said finally, up in the mountains near Glacier National Park. It's got this lake that's so clear you can see all the way to the bottom. In the early morning, when the mist is rising off the water and the mountains are reflected in the surface, it's like looking at heaven. I'd like to see that someday, Lily said. Maybe you will, Frank replied. Life has a way of taking you places you never expected. Around 2 in the morning, they stopped at a truck stop for a break. Frank bought Lily a sandwich and a bottle of water, and they sat in a booth by the window, watching the trucks come and go. "This is number 3 on the list," Frank said, sliding a container of ice cream across the table. "Eat ice cream for breakfast." Lily stared at it, then at him. "But it's not morning yet." "It's 2 a.m., Frank said with a shrug. "That's technically morning. Close enough anyway." A smile spread across Lily's face, small but genuine. She picked up the spoon and took a bite, her eyes closing in pleasure. "This is the best thing I've ever tasted," she said. "Everything tastes better when you're on an adventure," Frank said, taking a bite of his own ice cream. "Martha used to say that. She said food was just fuel, unless you ate it with someone you cared about." Then it became something more. "She sounds amazing," Lily said. "Your wife." "She was." Frank's voice grew soft with memory. She had this way of making everything feel special, even ordinary things like grocery shopping or doing laundry. She said life was too short to waste on being bored. "How did you meet her again?" Frank told her the story of the county fair, adding details he had forgotten earlier. How Martha had been wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, how she had laughed at his terrible jokes, how he had known even then that she was the one. "That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard," Lily said when he finished. "Do you think I'll ever find someone like that?" Frank looked at her, this brave, broken child who had already seen more heartbreak than most people experienced in a lifetime. "I think," he said carefully, "that you've already proven you know how to love. That's the most important thing. The rest will come when the time is right." "Danny would love this," she said. "We'll get him some," Frank promised. "When this is all over, we'll bring him the biggest ice cream sundae they make, with sprinkles, with all the sprinkles in the world." They finished their impromptu breakfast and got back on the road. The hours slipped by, the landscape shifting from desert to farmland to the first hints of coastal mountains. As the sky began to lighten in the east, Frank pulled off at a scenic overlook and cut the engine. "Number 4, he said. "Watch the sun come up." They climbed out of the truck and sat on a low stone wall facing east. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and morning dew. Birds were beginning to stir in the trees around them, their songs filling the silence. The sky was a canvas of pink and gold, the first rays of sunlight spilling over the horizon like liquid fire. Lily sat transfixed, her eyes reflecting the colors of the dawn. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Frank nodded, feeling something loosen in his chest. He had seen 1,000 sunrises from the cab of his truck, but this one felt different. This one felt like a beginning. "My mom used to wake me up early sometimes," Lily said softly, "before she died. She would take me outside and we would watch the sunrise together. She said it was God's way of reminding us that every day was a new chance." Frank felt his throat tighten. Sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "I miss her so much." "I know," Frank said. "Missing people we love is the hardest thing in the world, but it also means we were lucky enough to have them in the first place." "Make a wish," he said softly. Lily closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. When she opened them again, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I wished for Danny to see this someday," she said, "even if it's just in his dreams." They sat there until the sun had fully risen, painting the world in shades of gold and green. Then Frank helped Lily back into the truck, and they continued on toward the ocean. The Pacific appeared around noon, a vast expanse of blue that stretched to the horizon and beyond. Lily pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Is that it?" she asked, her voice hushed with awe. "That's it," Frank confirmed. "The Pacific Ocean, biggest thing you'll ever see." He found a parking spot near the beach, and they walked together to the edge of the sand. Lily stopped at the waterline, staring out at the waves as if she could not quite believe they were real. "Can I touch it?" she asked. "Go ahead," Frank said. She kicked off her shoes and waded into the surf, gasping as the cold water swirled around her ankles. She stood there for a long moment, letting the waves wash over her feet, tears streaming down her face. "I wish Danny was here," she said. "He always dreamed about the ocean." Frank pulled out his phone. "Let's show him," he said. "We'll take pictures and videos, as many as we can. When you see him, you can share them with him. It'll be like he was here too." They spent an hour on the beach documenting everything. Frank filmed Lily running along the waterline, her laughter mixing with the crash of the waves. He took photos of the seagulls and the tide pools and the distant boats bobbing on the horizon. Lily collected shells and smooth pebbles, filling her pockets with treasures to bring back to Danny. "Look at this one," Lily called out, holding up a sand dollar. "It's perfect. Danny's gonna love it." Frank walked over to examine her find. "That's a beauty," he agreed. "You know, Martha used to say sand dollars were coins left behind by mermaids. Do you believe in mermaids?" "I believe in keeping an open mind," Frank said with a smile. "The world's a strange and wonderful place. Just when you think you've seen everything, something surprises you." They continued walking along the beach, the sand warm beneath their feet. Lily spotted a tide pool and knelt down to examine the creatures within, marveling at the tiny crabs and colorful anemones. "Everything's so alive here," she said. "It's like a whole different world." "It is," Frank agreed. "The ocean is its own universe. There are creatures down there we haven't even discovered yet. Martha used to read books about marine biology. She dreamed of going scuba diving someday, but we never got around to it. Why not?" Frank sighed. "Always thought we had more time. Work kept me on the road, and she had her garden and her church activities. We kept saying next year, then there weren't any more next years left." Lily looked up at him with those wise, old eyes. "That's why I have to do this for Danny," she said. "We don't know how much time he has. I don't want him to have any what-ifs." Frank felt his throat tighten. "You're absolutely right," he said. "No what-ifs." They walked in silence for a while, the only sound the rhythmic crash of the waves and the cry of distant seagulls. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the water from grey to blue, sparkling like diamonds in the light. Lily suddenly stopped, her attention caught by something in the sand. She knelt down and began to dig, her small fingers working quickly. "What did you find?" Frank asked. Lily held up her discovery, a piece of sea glass, worn smooth by years of tumbling in the surf. It was a deep blue color, almost the same shade as the ocean on a clear day. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Sea glass is special," Frank said. "It starts out as something broken, discarded, but the ocean transforms it into something beautiful. Martha used to collect it. She had a whole jar full on our kitchen windowsill. What happened to it?" Frank paused. "I still have it," he admitted. "I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it. Sometimes I take out a piece and hold it. Remember the day we found it together." Lily pressed the sea glass into his hand. "Then you should have this one," she said, "to add to the collection." Frank looked at the small blue treasure, feeling its smoothness against his palm. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This means more than you know." As the afternoon wore on, they found a small seafood shack and ate fish tacos on a bench overlooking the water. Lily talked about Danny, about their parents, about the life they had lost, and the one they were still fighting to hold on to. "He used to be so active," she said, "always running around, climbing things, getting into trouble. The doctor said he needed to take it easy, but he never listened. He said life was too short to be careful." Frank smiled sadly. "Smart kid. The smartest." Lily's voice caught. "That's why this is so unfair. He deserves to be here doing these things himself, not stuck in a hospital bed, watching his life slip away." Frank reached over and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Life isn't fair," he said gently. "That's the hardest lesson any of us has to learn. But the way we respond to that unfairness, the choices we make in the face of it, that's what defines us. You're here right now, doing something incredible for your brother. That matters, Lily. That matters more than you know." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun begin its descent toward the water. Then Lily pulled out the list again, her eyes scanning the items. "There's one more," she said. "Find a shooting star and make a wish." Frank nodded. "We'll have to wait for dark for that one. But I know just the place." They drove inland as the sun set, climbing into the hills above the coast. Frank knew a spot, a pull-out on a winding mountain road where the light pollution was minimal and the stars blazed like diamonds against black velvet. They arrived just as the last light faded from the sky. Frank spread a blanket on the hood of his truck, and they lay side by side, staring up at the emerging stars. "Martha and I used to do this," Frank said quietly. "Find a quiet spot, watch the stars, talk about our dreams." She believed in wishes, in magic, in things we couldn't explain. I always thought I was the practical one, but now I think maybe she was right all along. Lily turned to look at him. "Do you miss her?" "Every day," Frank admitted, "but I'm starting to understand that missing someone isn't the same as losing them. The love doesn't go away. It just changes, becomes something you carry with you wherever you go." They lay in silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light, impossibly vast and ancient. "There!" Lily suddenly shouted, pointing. "A shooting star!" Frank saw it too, a bright streak of light arcing across the darkness before fading into nothing. He closed his eyes and made a wish of his own. "Did you make a wish?" he asked. Lily nodded, her eyes still fixed on the sky. "I wished for Danny to be okay. I know it might not come true, but I had to try. That's all any of us can do," Frank said. "Try, hope, love as hard as we can for as long as we can." They stayed on that mountain until the cold drove them back into the truck. Frank cranked up the heat, and Lily curled up in the passenger seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Thank you," she said sleepily, "for everything." Frank smiled, feeling something warm and unfamiliar spreading through his chest. It was hope, he realized, something he had not felt in a very long time. "Get some rest," he said. "We've got a long drive ahead of us tomorrow." Lily was asleep within minutes, her small form rising and falling with each breath. Frank watched her for a moment, then turned his eyes to the road ahead. He thought about Danny, fighting for his life in a hospital bed. He thought about Lily, brave beyond her years, carrying the weight of her brother's dreams. He thought about Martha and the love that had sustained him through 4 decades and continued to sustain him still. And he thought about himself, about the walls he had built since Martha's death, the distance he had maintained from the world. He had told himself it was easier that way, safer. But seeing Lily, watching her fight for her brother, he realized that safety was not the same as living. The night stretched on, and Frank drove, carrying a sleeping girl through the darkness toward a brother who needed her, toward a future that was uncertain but still worth fighting for. They arrived at the hospital in Phoenix late the next morning, after stopping briefly at the group home so Lily could check in with Mrs. Patterson. The older woman had hugged Lily tightly, her eyes glistening with tears, and thanked Frank more times than he could count. The hospital was a sprawling complex of buildings and parking structures, intimidating in its size and sterility. Frank parked the truck and walked with Lily to the main entrance, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Are you nervous?" he asked. Lily nodded. "What if he's gotten worse? What if he's fighting?" Frank said firmly. "Just like you. Now let's go see him." They navigated the maze of hallways and elevators, following signs to the pediatric cardiac unit. A nurse led them to Danny's room, pausing outside the door. "He's been asking for you," the nurse said to Lily. "Non-stop. You're all he talks about." Lily took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room was small and filled with the soft beeping of machines. A boy lay in the bed, pale and thin, with tubes and wires connecting him to an array of monitors. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. "Danny." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. The boy's eyes fluttered open and a smile spread across his face. "Lily," he breathed, "you came." Lily rushed to his side, taking his hand in hers. "I'm here, Danny, I'm here." Frank hung back by the door, watching the reunion with a lump in his throat. Danny's eyes, the same green as his sister's, found him across the room. "Who's that?" Danny asked. "This is Frank," Lily said. "He helped me. He's a truck driver." Danny's face lit up. A real truck driver. With a big truck and everything. Frank stepped forward, a smile tugging at his lips. "The biggest. It's parked outside. Maybe I can show it to you sometime." "That would be so cool," Danny said, his voice weak but enthusiastic. "Lily, did you do it?" "The list?" Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I did, Danny. I saw the ocean. I rode in the truck. I ate ice cream for breakfast and watched the sun come up and found a shooting star. I did all of it for you." She pulled out her phone and began showing him the pictures and videos, narrating each one with animated gestures and sound effects. Danny watched with wide eyes, drinking in every image, every story. "It's beautiful," he whispered, looking at a video of the waves crashing on the shore. "Just like I imagined." "And look," Lily said, pulling the shells and pebbles from her pocket. "I brought you these from the beach, so you can have a piece of the ocean with you." Danny took the treasures carefully, turning them over in his small hands. He looked up at his sister with an expression that made Frank's heart ache. "You're the best sister ever," Danny said. "The very best." Lily broke down then, sobbing as she wrapped her arms around her brother. Danny held her as best he could, his thin arms trembling with the effort. Frank stepped out of the room to give them privacy, leaning against the wall in the hallway. He pulled out his phone and saw a text from his dispatcher asking about his delivery schedule. He had been supposed to be in San Diego 2 days ago. There would be consequences, complaints, maybe even penalties. He did not care. A doctor approached, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and tired lines around her mouth. She glanced at the room where the siblings were reunited, then at Frank. "You're the truck driver," she said, "the one who brought her here." Frank nodded. "How is he?" "Really?" The doctor sighed. "His heart is failing. We have him on the list for a transplant, but finding a match takes time, and time is something Danny doesn't have much of. The surgery on Monday is a last-ditch effort to buy him more time, but honestly, I don't know if it will be enough." Frank felt the weight of those words settle over him like a shroud. "But there's hope. There's always hope," the doctor said. "As long as he's fighting, there's hope. And having his sister here, seeing how much she loves him, that's powerful medicine. The will to live matters more than most people realize." Frank spent the rest of the day at the hospital, watching over the siblings as they talked and laughed and cried together. Mrs. Patterson arrived in the late afternoon, bringing a bag of Danny's favorite snacks and a stuffed Spider-Man that Lily had left at the group home. As evening approached, Frank knew he had to leave. He had responsibilities, a job, a life waiting for him on the road. But something held him back, a reluctance to walk away that he could not quite explain. Lily found him in the hallway, her eyes red but her face calm. "You're leaving," she said. It was not a question. "I have to," Frank said, "but I'll be back, I promise." Lily nodded. "Thank you, Frank, for everything. You gave me something I didn't think was possible." "What's that?" "Hope," she said simply. Frank knelt down so he was at her level. "You gave me the same thing," he said. "I've been driving for 40 years, Lily. I've seen a lot of miles, a lot of places, a lot of people, but I've never met anyone as brave as you. You remind me of what matters." He stood and reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn photograph. It was Martha, smiling in their garden, surrounded by lilies. "This is my wife," he said, showing it to Lily. "She died 3 years ago, and I've been running ever since, running from the pain, from the memories, from everything that reminded me of what I lost. But you showed me that running doesn't help. The only thing that helps is loving as hard as you can, for as long as you can." He pressed the photograph into Lily's hands. "Keep this," he said. "It's a reminder. No matter what happens, no matter how hard things get, love is always worth fighting for." Lily looked at the photograph, then up at Frank. She wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not walking past me that night. Frank hugged her back, feeling tears prick at his eyes. "I'm glad I stopped," he said. "More glad than you'll ever know." He said goodbye to Danny, promising to return with a model truck for his collection. The boy smiled weakly but warmly, his spirit undimmed despite his fragile body. "Take care of her," Danny said, nodding toward his sister. "She acts tough, but she needs someone to look out for her too." "I will," Frank promised. "And you keep fighting, okay? I expect to see you sitting in my truck someday, honking the horn and pretending to drive." Danny grinned. "Deal." Mrs. Patterson walked Frank to the elevator, her expression a mixture of gratitude and exhaustion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "When Lily ran away, I feared the worst. These kids, they've been through so much already. I was so afraid something terrible would happen to her." "She's a remarkable young woman," Frank said. "They both are. You should be proud of the way you've cared for them." Mrs. Patterson shook her head. "I'm just doing my job. But you, Mr. Holloway, you went above and beyond. You didn't have to stop that night. You didn't have to get involved." Frank thought about that for a moment. "Maybe I did," he said finally. "Maybe that's exactly what I had to do, even if I didn't know it at the time." The elevator arrived, and Frank stepped inside. Before the doors closed, he turned back to Mrs. Patterson. "Take care of them," he said. "They're special, those two." "I know," Mrs. Patterson replied. "And so are you, Mr. Holloway, so are you." Frank walked out of the hospital and into the evening air, his heart heavier and lighter at the same time. He climbed into his truck and sat there for a moment, staring at the dashboard, thinking about everything that had happened. His phone buzzed. Another text from the dispatcher, more urgent this time. He typed a quick response, promising to be in San Diego by the next morning. Then he started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The highway stretched before him, familiar and endless. But something was different now. The miles did not feel like an escape anymore. They felt like a journey, with a purpose he had not known he was missing. He thought about Lily and Danny, about their courage and their love. He thought about Martha, about the life they had shared and the lessons she had taught him. He thought about all the people he had passed on his travels, all the stories he had never heard because he had not taken the time to stop and listen. Maybe it was not too late to change. Maybe every mile was an opportunity, every truck stop a potential turning point. Maybe the road was not just about getting from one place to another, but about the connections made along the way. Frank drove through the night, the stars wheeling overhead, the world unfolding before him like a promise. 2 weeks later, Frank's phone rang. He was in Montana hauling a load of timber through the snow-covered mountains when the call came through. "Frank?" It was Lily's voice, trembling with emotion. "Frank, you need to come back." "What happened?" Frank asked, his heart clenching. "Danny had his surgery," Lily said. "And then the most amazing thing happened. A donor heart became available. They did the transplant yesterday." Frank pulled over to the side of the road, unable to drive and listen at the same time. The snow was falling heavily now, blanketing the world in white. "Is he okay?" "He's going to be okay," Lily said, and he could hear the tears in her voice. "The doctors say the surgery went perfectly. His body is accepting the new heart. He's already waking up, already asking for Spider-Man comics and ice cream. Frank, he's going to live." Frank closed his eyes, feeling tears stream down his face. He thought about the wish he had made on that shooting star, about the hope he had carried with him across thousands of miles. "That's wonderful, Lily. That's the best news I've ever heard." "The doctors said it was a miracle," Lily continued, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. "The donor was a perfect match, and they got the heart just in time. A few more days, and it would have been too late." "Do you know anything about the donor?" Frank asked. Lily's voice grew softer. "They said it was a teenager from California. A car accident. His family decided to donate his organs. Because of them, Danny gets to live." Frank sat in silence, absorbing the weight of that information. One family's tragedy had become another family's salvation. The circle of life and death, loss and hope, continuing on as it always had. "He wants to see you," Lily said. He keeps asking about the truck. He says you promised to let him honk the horn." Frank laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Tell him I'm on my way," he said. "It might take me a few days, but I'll be there." The drive back to Arizona took 3 days. Frank pushed through the snow and ice, stopping only when absolutely necessary, his mind fixed on the hospital room where a boy was getting a second chance at life. He thought about the donor family, about the courage it must have taken to make that decision in the midst of their grief. He thought about all the people whose lives would be changed by that single act of generosity, the ripples spreading outward like waves on a pond. When he crossed into Arizona, the snow gave way to clear skies and warm sunshine. Frank felt something lift in his chest, a weight he had not even known he was carrying. He called Lily from the road. "I'm about 2 hours out," he said. "How's Danny doing?" "Better every day," Lily replied, and he could hear the joy in her voice. "He's already complaining about the hospital food. The nurses say that's a good sign." "That boy," Frank chuckled. "Nothing can keep him down." "He asked me to tell you something," Lily said. "He said to tell you that Spider-Man never gives up, and neither does he." Frank felt his throat tighten. "Tell him Spider-Man's got nothing on him," he said. "Danny's the real superhero." He hung up and drove on, the miles passing quickly beneath his wheels. The landscape changed from desert to city as he approached Phoenix, the familiar skyline rising in the distance. When he finally arrived at the hospital 3 days later, Lily was waiting for him in the lobby. She ran to him the moment she saw him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You came," she said. "You really came." "I made a promise," Frank replied. "I don't break promises." Danny was sitting up in bed when they entered his room, color in his cheeks for the first time in months. His eyes lit up when he saw Frank. "Mr. Frank," he exclaimed, "Lily said you would come." Frank crossed the room and took Danny's hand in his. "How are you feeling, buddy?" "Tired," Danny admitted, "but good. Better than I've felt in a long time. The doctors say I have a new heart, a really strong one." "That's right," Frank said, "and you've got to take care of it. No more climbing things and getting into trouble, okay?" Danny grinned mischievously. "I'll try, but no promises." They talked for hours, Frank telling stories about the road, while Danny listened with rapt attention. Lily sat beside her brother, holding his hand, her face radiant with joy. "Tell me about the biggest truck you ever saw," Danny said, his eyes wide with interest. Frank thought about it. "There was this rig I saw in Texas once," he said. "They call it a road train. It was pulling 4 trailers, stretched out longer than a football field. Took the driver about 10 minutes just to park the thing." "Wow," Danny breathed. "I want to see one of those someday." "Maybe you will," Frank said. "There's a whole world out there waiting for you, Danny, and now you've got the heart to explore it." Danny grinned, his hand moving to touch his chest, where the new heart was beating strong and steady. "The doctor said I have to be careful for a while," he said. "No running or jumping until I heal. But after that, I can do almost anything I want." "Almost anything?" "Well," Danny amended, "no base jumping or cage fighting. But Lily says those things are stupid anyway." "Your sister is a wise woman," Frank agreed, winking at Lily. The conversation turned to lighter subjects, Danny peppering Frank with questions about trucks and highways and distant places. Frank answered patiently, marveling at the boy's curiosity and spirit. As the afternoon wore on, Danny's energy began to flag. His eyelids drooped, his words coming slower. "Mr. Frank?" he said sleepily. "Yeah, buddy, thank you for taking care of Lily, for helping her do the list. It was the best present anyone ever gave me." Frank felt his throat tighten. "It was my honor, Danny. You're a brave kid. The bravest I've ever met." Danny smiled, his eyes closing. "Will you come back and visit?" "Try and stop me," Frank said. Danny drifted off to sleep, his breathing slow and steady. Frank watched him for a moment, marveling at the resilience of children, at their capacity to fight and hope and love even in the darkest circumstances. Lily walked him to the door, her eyes glistening. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, "for everything you've done." Frank shook his head. "You don't have to thank me, Lily. You and Danny gave me something too. You reminded me what it means to be alive, to care, to connect." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. He had been carrying it with him since Martha's funeral, unable to let it go, unable to move on. It was her wedding ring. "Martha would have loved you," he said, pressing it into Lily's hand. "She would have seen the same thing in you that I see." A heart bigger than the world and the courage to use it. Lily looked at the ring, tears streaming down her face. "I can't take this." "Please," Frank said. "It's not goodbye, it's just a reminder that love doesn't end. It just changes shape." Lily clutched the ring to her chest. "I'll treasure it," she whispered. "Always." Frank hugged her one last time, then turned and walked down the hallway toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back. Lily was still standing there, watching him go. She raised her hand in a wave. Frank waved back, then stepped out into the sunlight. The truck was waiting for him in the parking lot, patient and familiar. He climbed into the cab and sat for a moment, looking at the empty seat beside him. It did not feel so empty anymore. He started the engine and pulled out onto the road, heading toward the next delivery, the next journey, the next opportunity to make a difference. The highway stretched before him like it always had, endless and full of possibility. But now he understood something he had not understood before. The road was not about the destinations. It was about the people you met along the way, the strangers who became friends, the broken hearts that found healing, the wishes that came true against all odds. Frank drove on, the sun warm on his face, Martha's memory in his heart, and a new sense of purpose guiding his wheels. Somewhere behind him, a boy with a new heart was dreaming of adventures to come. Somewhere behind him, a girl who had crossed the country for love was planning a future she had not dared to hope for. And somewhere ahead, there were more stories waiting to unfold, more lives waiting to intersect, more moments of grace hiding in the ordinary. Frank smiled and pressed the accelerator, ready to meet them all. 3 years passed like miles on a highway, quick and full of change. Frank kept driving, but his routes always seemed to take him through Arizona now. He would stop in Phoenix every few weeks, spending a day or two with the kids he had come to think of as his own. He watched Danny grow stronger, his new heart carrying him through soccer games and climbing trees, and all the things he had been too sick to do before. He watched Lily flourish, her grades improving, her confidence growing, her smile appearing more often. When Danny turned 11, Frank was there with a cake shaped like a truck. When Lily graduated from middle school at the top of her class, Frank sat in the audience with Mrs. Patterson, cheering louder than anyone. The group home had become a real home now, at least for the two of them. Mrs. Patterson had pulled strings and called in favors, making sure they were never separated again. And Frank had become a permanent fixture in their lives, an unofficial grandfather who appeared with presents and stories and the kind of unconditional love that every child deserved. On the 4th anniversary of that night at the gas station, Frank picked up both kids and drove them to the beach. They spent the day playing in the waves, building sandcastles, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar shades of gold and pink. "Remember the first time we were here?" Lily asked, sitting beside Frank on the sand. "I remember," Frank said. "You were a scared runaway with a list and a dream, and you were a sad trucker who didn't believe in wishes," Lily teased. Frank laughed. "I believe in them now. How can I not after everything we've been through?" Danny came running up, his hair wet and his face split in a huge grin. "Hey, Mr. Frank, watch this." He attempted a cartwheel, failed spectacularly, and landed in a heap in the sand, laughing. Frank shook his head, smiling. 3 years ago, that kid couldn't walk across a room without getting winded. Now look at him. "Miracles happen," Lily said softly. "Sometimes you just have to believe." They stayed on the beach until the stars came out, then lay on blankets and searched for shooting stars. Danny found the first one, pointing excitedly at the streak of light across the sky. "Make a wish," he shouted. Frank closed his eyes and wished, not for himself, but for the 2 kids beside him. For their happiness, their health, their futures, for all the adventures they had yet to experience and all the dreams they had yet to dream. When he opened his eyes, Lily was watching him. "What did you wish for?" she asked. "If I tell you, it won't come true," Frank said with a wink. Lily smiled and leaned against his shoulder. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Whatever you wished for, I bet it's already come true." Frank looked at her, at Danny, at the vast ocean spreading out before them. He thought about Martha, about the road, about all the years he had spent searching for something he could not name. "Maybe you're right," he said. "Maybe it has." They drove back to Phoenix the next morning, the kids sleeping in the cab, while Frank navigated the familiar highway. When he dropped them off at the group home, Danny hugged him tightly around the waist. "Thanks, Mr. Frank," he said, "for everything." "Any time, buddy." Frank ruffled his hair. "Now go get some rest. You've got a busy week ahead." Danny ran inside, but Lily lingered, her hand on the truck's door. "Frank," she said. "Yeah? I've been thinking. When I grow up, I want to help people, like you helped me and Danny. I want to find the kids who are lost and scared and alone, and I want to show them that someone cares." Frank felt his eyes sting with tears. "I think that's a wonderful goal," he said. "And I think you're going to be amazing at it. You really think so?" "I know so." Frank reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "You've already saved one person, Lily. You saved me." Lily smiled, and for a moment she looked so much older than her years. "We saved each other," she said. "That's how it works." She turned and walked into the group home, pausing at the door to wave one last time. Frank waved back, then climbed into his truck and started the engine. The road stretched out before him, endless and familiar, but it did not feel lonely anymore. It felt like a thread connecting him to all the people who mattered, all the places that held meaning, all the moments that made life worth living. He thought about the list that had started it all. 5 simple wishes written in a child's hand. See the ocean, ride in a big truck, eat ice cream for breakfast, watch the sun come up, find a shooting star and make a wish. All of them had come true, and more besides. Frank smiled and pressed the accelerator, heading toward the next destination, the next adventure, the next chance to make a difference. Behind him, a gas station stood silent in the desert night, just another stop on the endless highway. But to Frank, it would always be the place where everything changed. The place where a girl asked for help and a trucker decided to stop. The place where a list of wishes became a journey of love. The place where 2 broken hearts found healing in each other. And the place where Frank Holloway finally understood what Martha had been trying to tell him all along. That life was not about the miles you traveled or the loads you hauled. It was about the people you loved and the difference you made. One stop at a time. One wish at a time, one heart at a time. The truck roared on into the night, carrying Frank toward a future that was uncertain but full of hope. And somewhere in Arizona, 2 children were dreaming of all the adventures yet to come, all because a trucker decided to stop, all because a girl dared to ask for help, all because love in the end was stronger than fear. The highway stretched on forever, but Frank was not running anymore. He was finally, truly home. 6 months after Danny's transplant, Frank made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He bought a small house in Phoenix, just 20 minutes from the hospital, where Danny still went for regular checkups. The trucking company had been understanding when he explained his situation, and they had worked out a schedule that kept him closer to home more often than not. The house was nothing special, a modest 2-bedroom with a small yard and a garage, just big enough for his tools. But to Frank, it was perfect. It was a place to come home to, a place to build memories, a place to put down roots after 4 decades of constant motion. Lily and Danny visited every weekend they could, and Frank's house became a second home for them. He taught Danny how to change a tire and check the oil in a car. He helped Lily with her homework and listened when she needed to talk about the things that worried her. He was there for the good days and the bad days, the celebrations and the setbacks. Mrs. Patterson had become a friend as well, stopping by occasionally with updates on the other children at the group home. Frank started volunteering there once a month, telling stories about the road and showing the kids his truck. Some of them reminded him of Lily, lost and scared and desperate for someone to see them. He saw them all now, every single one. The following spring, something unexpected happened. The group home received a call from a couple in California who had seen a news story about Frank and the children. They were looking to foster, and they had specifically requested Lily and Danny. Frank was there when Mrs. Patterson delivered the news, watching the siblings' faces as they processed what it meant. A real family, a permanent home, a future they had never dared to dream about. "But what about you?" Lily asked Frank, her eyes filled with worry. "Will we still see you?" Frank smiled, though his heart was aching. "Of course you will," he said. "Nothing's going to change that. I'll always be here for you, no matter where you live." The adoption process took 6 months, during which Frank got to know the new family. Robert and Maria Delgado were good people, warm and patient, and genuinely committed to giving Lily and Danny the life they deserved. They welcomed Frank into their lives without hesitation, recognizing the bond he had formed with the children. The day the adoption was finalized, they all gathered at the courthouse for a celebration. Frank stood in the back, watching as the judge declared Lily and Danny officially part of the Delgado family. Both children were crying, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from finally finding what you had been searching for your whole life. Afterward, Danny ran to Frank and threw his arms around him. "Thank you, Grandpa Frank," he said, "for everything." Frank hugged him tight. "I'm so proud of you, buddy, both of you." Lily joined them, wrapping her arms around them both. "We couldn't have done this without you," she said. "You changed everything that night at the gas station. You saved us." Frank shook his head. "You saved yourselves," he said. "I just helped a little along the way." Robert and Maria approached, their faces glowing with joy. "We want you to know," Robert said, "that you're part of this family too. Whatever these kids need, you'll always be there for them. And that means you're there for us as well." Maria nodded in agreement. "Sunday dinners," she said. "Every week. No excuses." Frank felt tears prick at his eyes. He had spent so long alone, running from connections, avoiding the pain of loss, but standing here now, surrounded by people who had become his family, he realized that the pain was worth it, that love was always worth it, even when it hurt. "I'll be there," he promised, every Sunday. The years rolled on, marked by milestones and memories. Danny graduated from high school, then college, pursuing a degree in medicine because he wanted to help kids like himself. Lily became a social worker, dedicating her life to children in foster care, making sure no child ever felt as alone as she had felt. Frank kept driving, but his routes were shorter now, his time at home longer. He watched the children grow into adults, watched them fall in love and build lives of their own. He was there for weddings and graduations, birthdays and holidays, all the moments that made a life. And every year, on the anniversary of that night at the gas station, they would gather together and tell the story. The story of a scared girl and a tired trucker, of a wish list and a journey, of love found in the most unexpected places. The story of how a stranger became a father. The story of how a broken heart found healing. The story of grace. Frank lived to be 92 years old, passing peacefully in his sleep on a warm spring night. Lily and Danny were by his side, holding his hands, telling him how much he meant to them. His funeral was standing room only, truckers from across the country coming to pay their respects to a man they called Silver Eagle. The stories shared were of kindness and generosity, of a life spent helping others, of a legacy that would endure. Lily spoke at the service, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Frank Holloway saved my life," she said. "And not just mine. He saved my brother. He saved countless others through his example. He taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to care when it would be easier to walk away. She paused, looking out at the crowd of mourners. Frank used to say that life was about the people you met along the way, the strangers who became friends, the friends who became family. He was right, and he was the best proof of that truth I ever knew. Danny stood next to her, his arm around her shoulders. "Grandpa Frank gave me a new heart," he said. "Not the one in my chest, although he was part of that too, but a new heart for living. He showed me that even when things seem darkest, there's always hope. There's always a reason to keep going." They buried him next to Martha, in the cemetery, with the view of the mountains he had loved. His headstone read simply, "Frank Holloway, 1968-2060, beloved father, grandfather, friend." He stopped when others walked by, and every year on the anniversary of his passing, Lily and Danny would visit his grave. They would bring flowers, lilies and roses, and they would tell him about their lives, their children, their gratitudes, and sometimes, late at night when the stars were bright and the world was quiet, they would swear they could hear him. A voice carried on the wind, warm and familiar. "Keep going," the voice would say. "Keep loving. Keep stopping for the ones who need you." And they did, forever. The highway stretched on forever, but Frank was not running anymore. He was finally, truly home.